Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Negaraku. Yang berbahagia Datuk Insinyur Abdul Rahim Haji Hashim, Vice-Chancellor of University of Malaya, Mr. Johan Kraft, or as we fondly know him as Mr. Jojo, Senior Principal Assistant Director, Industry Relations Division, Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education Malaysia. Yang berbahagia Professor Datuk Dr. Imran Hu Abdullah, Coordinator for Central Region Cluster of Deputy Vice-Chancellors of Industry and Community. Yang berbahagia Profesor Dr. Engineer Insinyur Renugant Varatharaju, Chairman of the Committee of Deputy Vice-Chancellors of Industry and Community Networks, Professor Dr. Nur Saadah Abdul Rahman, Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research and Innovation, University of Malaya, Professor Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim, Associate Vice-Chancellor of Research and Innovation, University of Malaya, Professor Dr. Rofina Yasmin Othman, Associate Vice-Chancellor of Industry and Community Networks, University of Malaya, also coordinator of the forum. Distinguished panelists, Mr. Robert Banatello, CEO of EU Malaysia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, EUMCCI, Mr. Darzi Nur Halim, Director of the Sharing Economy Ecosystem Division, Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, Mr. Shahrizan Abdul Latif, Head of Campus Initiative, Pitch-in Equity Crowdfunding, and Watchtower and Friends Accelerator, Ms. Shireen Shariza Dato Abdul Ghani, Co-founder and Director of Sorga Ventures and former CEO of Talent Corp, Ms. Pathma Subramaniam, Senior Writer for Enterprise and Personal Wealth, The Edge Malaysia, Professor Dr. Evelyn Shamala Paul Devadasan, Economics Professor, Faculty of Economics and Administration, also the moderator for this forum, cherished students, future job creators and seekers, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the forum, the Gig Economy, Disruptive Innovation or Opportunity for Exploitation. I'm Nasrul, your host for this afternoon. Before we begin, please allow for the recitation of a short prayer to seek blessings for our auspicious event today. Al-Fatiha. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. حمدا حامدين حمدا شاكرين حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم اجعل جمعنا جمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا من بعده تفرقا معصوما. O Allah, with your mercy, we are able to gather here to learn and understand the gig economy, its pitfalls and opportunities. We seek your guidance to prepare us for a future that allows equitable growth, stability and job satisfaction for the workforce. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite our host, the Vice-Chancellor of University of Malaya, Yang berbahagia Datuk Dr. Abdul Rahim Haji Hashim, to give his welcoming remarks.
Okay. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang bahagia Encik Johan Cruyff, Senior Principal Assistant Director, Industry Relations Division, Department of Higher Education, Ministry of Education Malaysia. Yang bahagia Prof. Datuk Dr. Engineer Renugath Varataraju, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Industry and Community Relations, Universiti Putra Malaysia, merangkap Chairman Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellor, Industry and Community Networks. Bahagia Prof. Datuk Dr. Imran Hu Abdullah, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Industry and Community Partnerships, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia, who is also the Coordinator for Central Region Cluster of Deputy Vice Chancellors, Industry and Community, Department of Higher Education Malaysia. Bahagia Prof. Dr. Nur Saadah Abdul Rahman, DVC RNI, University of Malaya. Yang bahagia Prof. Dr. Shaliza Ibrahim, Associate Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation, University of Malaya. And also bahagia Prof. Dr. Ravina Yasmin Osman, Associate Vice Chancellor, Industry and Community Networks, University of Malaya, who is also the coordinator for this forum. Esteemed panel members, I don't have to read out your names, it's been read by the MC a while ago. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera and very good afternoon to everyone present. On behalf of Universiti Malaya, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to this gig economy forum, Disruptive Innovation or Opportunity for Exploitation. And I'm sure there are answers for that. You have to wait for the panel. But this forum has been curated in response to the call by Yang Berhormat Minister of Education in making the university a public field of open intellectualism and to empower the education system with the involvement of the community and the private sector, in particular the industry. And also it is a critical role of universities to provide avenues for interaction between academia and its communities and stakeholders, and Universiti Malaya fully supports the structured strategies formulated by the Department of Higher Education of Malaysia, Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellors for Industry and Community Networks. Now, the mission of University of Malaya, just to give you a sort of an overview, is to advance knowledge and learning through quality research and education for the nation and for humanities. I don't think it's any different from other universities in Malaysia, or for that matter, globally. Now, to achieve this, the university continues to focus on strengthening its fundamentals through the many phases of its strategic plan. And we are also intensifying our efforts to enhance the university's visibility through internationalization, collaboration and partnerships with strategic industries and stakeholders, and also to incentivize research activities through collaboration and efficient research management. Again, this is nothing dissimilar about other universities. It is also critical that we focus on social responsibility by anticipating society's needs and to pay particular attention to products of research which will result in the transfer of knowledge back to society. And this is an emphasis, I think, it's not just recently, but a while ago, a lot of times that when we do actually research, it's actually about the production of papers and so on and so forth. But as we go forward, a lot of the emphasis is now on impact, especially to the society and community surrounding us, but also to humanity and also to industry. And we are actually quite pleased that our efforts continue to be validated, such as through the recent ranking announcements for Universiti Malaya. We are quite pleased to say that we are now top 20 in the Times Higher Education ranking for universities in emerging economies, and in addition of breaking into the top 100 under the QS World Ranking. So participation in the ranking system is to further improve its value proposition and to benchmark against other global institutions of higher learning. I'm sure there's a lot of issues, a lot of points made against ranking and rating, but being a sort of a global university as such, we believe that ranking is very, very important for us, especially in terms of partnership and collaboration with other universities globally. Now, all this has to be put in the context of today's economic environment, where universities will need to play an increasingly challenging role. We know that, for one, that today's graduates needs the ability to recognize what new knowledge means in a broader context and to build a more extensive skill sets in order to fully utilize this knowledge in the fast-changing work environment. And we understand that there's a lot of studies that has been conducted saying that perhaps as we move on into the future, not only the future of work is uncertain, but in terms of the knowledge that's available now or what we have learned at present may not be relevant in the too distant future. So the question is that how is the ability and the agility of our graduates to address those particular issues. And we certainly recognize also that our graduates are entering into new paradigms of employment and work, and it is imperative that we understand the different perspectives that will shape the future of the workplace that awaits them. Hence, today's forum is indeed very, very relevant as we seek the input of the industry as well as the relevant stakeholders on one of the most disruptive models of the new workplace, i.e. gig economy. As Malaysia's premier university, University Malaya will continue to lead on multiple fronts and capitalize on its many talents and strength to forge new collaborations, partnerships and engagements with local as well as global industries and institutions to ensure that it remains at the leading edge. It is important for us to connect our students to the best resources and expose them to the global environment as part of our efforts to prepare graduates to handle emerging technologies as the economy moves into the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And the challenge is for us is how do we handle these fast evolving smart technologies and practices and equip our students appropriately. And these challenges are just not UM's challenges, but I guess it's also for universities across the world as well. So this particular sharing of today's forum is indeed apt and pertinent to the issues at hand. Now moving forward, we will continue to create strategies that will ensure our growth as a global economic institution. Now, this will also include academic programs transformation initiatives, including restructuring of the curricula to stay current through a future-ready curriculum framework, employing the so-called 21st century technologies for teaching and learning and exposing students to impact-driven research as well as technologies with the final aim of producing future-ready graduates with the so-called DNA, processing not only critical thinking and problem-solving attributes, but also other attributes that will contribute positively to the socio-economy of the nation and the world. Now for this year is particular very, very important year because this is where we review our curriculum, and the impact of whatever that we do this year will actually be felt only when the graduates graduate in 2024 or 2025 at that point in time. So we want to take this opportunity to really not just jumpstart, but quantum leap as far as curriculum is concerned, with a view of looking at the various graduate attributes that's required, yeah, for the future, but also to make sure that they are more adaptive, more agile as you move into the future workspace. Lastly, I would like also to take this opportunity to thank the Industry Relations Division, Department of Higher Education Malaysia, and the Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellors of Industry and Community Networks for supporting and sponsoring this much awaited forum, and also to the University of Malaya's team under DVC PNI, as well as the PNC Jaringan Industri and Masyarakat, JIM, for the dedicated organization. And we hope that you'll have an enjoyable and productive session this afternoon. With that, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Dato. Ladies and gentlemen, as Dato has mentioned, this forum is curated by the Office of the Associate Vice Chancellor of Industry and Community Networks, or as we call it, JIM, Jaringan Industri and Masyarakat. As such, it is my honor to invite Professor Dr. Rafina Yasmin Othman, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Industry and Community Networks, and the coordinator for the forum to give her speech. A few words.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. Thank you very much. Actually, this one we intended for Prof. Dr. Imran to give a speech, but you know, he felt that maybe I could just say a few words instead. I think Dr. VC has put the context of this meeting appropriately in terms of why universities need to be more interactive with our stakeholders, and how we need to learn as much as possible and how to prepare our graduates for the future. So it just remains for me, on behalf of the Central Region Cluster of the Committee of Deputy Vice Chancellors, Industry and Community Networks, it's a mouthful. The Malay acronym is even more, JKTTNC JIM. That's our acronym. But it's a really important grouping, and I really welcome all the members who are here today from the 20 public universities that make up the committee, especially our long-standing chair. I think we just had a changeover, but Prof. Renu, who has really driven this committee, and Prof. Imran from, Prof. Renu is from UPM, Prof. Imran from UKM, who is chairing the Central Region Committee. So this event is part of a series of industry university engagement series curated by public universities under this committee. And the main aim is to promote, strategize, and implement best practices for industry academia engagement. So today's forum, we focus on industry input. So as you notice, the panel is all industry. We only have a moderator from the university. That is really on purpose because we feel we want really to have a clear, unfettered or unbiased feedback from industry on this very important topic as we try and grapple with graduate employability and graduate readiness for our universities. So I'm not going to say anything more about the gig economy forum, except that this is a statistic I got. 55 million people in the US are gig workers. That's more than 35% of the workforce. And in Malaysia, the number of self-employed individuals has grown by 31%, and a growth figure that surpassed the conventional workforce according to EPF. And just to share with you, this idea of there are issues with something like the gig economy came up with an amazing talk given by Datuk Syaril, who was then the CEO of EPF, under the CEO faculty program, which is a program which brings top-level CEO into universities on an adjunct position. So he's an adjunct professor here. He spent 20 hours last year giving us talks, lectures, and whatsoever. And in one of those talks, he really voiced the concern of EPF on the structure of the gig economy worldwide. And so I think that's one of the things that triggered us a little bit to talk about it. But more recently, a minister in the current government also mentioned that maybe the gig economy is the answer to graduate unemployment, which now has risen apparently to such alarming numbers. But is it really the answer? we'd like to also know. So I won't say any more except that I'd like to thank Jojo and actually to Dr. Arham, who couldn't be here today, so he sends his apologies. Dr. Arham is the director of the Industry Relations Division in KPT, who has been very supportive of us. Thank you for allowing to curate this forum under the Committee of Public Universities, and specifically to Central Region members, UKM, UPM, UITM, USIM, and UPNM, all of whom are represented here today. And a special thanks, of course, to our industry panelists who have given us the available time to share their expert inputs, to our media partners, EFM, Asia Research News, also to Digital News Asia, who are here today, and The Edge, who I hope will give us some mention. The Edge, and The Edge also triggered this idea because one of our panelists actually wrote a really good article, questioning really also the support mechanism for gig economy workers in Malaysia. And most importantly, to our almost 200 visitors to Malaysia, partners, friends, supporters, and people who are hopefully going to give us some feedback on this. Welcome to and thank you very much for being here today. On that note, I'd like to hand over back to the MC, and we can start to hear the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, for the teaser of the forum. We now begin with inviting the panelists to the stage. We begin with the moderator for this session, Professor Dr. Evelyn Chamala from the Faculty of Economics and Administration, Mr. Robert Banatello, CEO of EUMCCI, Mr. Darzi Nur Halim, Director of the Sharing Economy Ecosystem Division, MDAC, Mr. Sharizan Abdul Latif, Head of Campus Initiative Pitch in Equity Crowdfunding and Watchtower and Friends Accelerator. That's another mouthful. Ms. Sharin Shariza Dato Abdul Ghani, Co-Founder and Director of Sorga Ventures. And Ms. Pathma Subramaniam, Senior Writer for Enterprise and Personal Wealth, The Edge. All right, Prof, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nasrul. A very good afternoon, Vice Chancellor, Deputy Vice Chancellor, Vice Chancellors, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Evelyn Devadasan and I'll be moderating this session. Firstly, I thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be part of this event and to moderate this session with such a distinguished group of panelists. Before I start to introduce the panelists, let me say a few words about the gig economy. When we think of the gig economy, the first thing that comes to our mind is freelancers, online demand, platform working. Of course, there's a fine distinction with the sharing economy, but some people do include the sharing economy such as Airbnb and Grab. But what is important is that, is this gig economy just a buzzword? It obviously is not, because it has come to actually define the state of the modern atypical market that we see today. There's not just a supply of gig workers, there's also a demand for gig workers. And what's interesting is that the gig economy presents a mixed bag for individuals. It presents opportunities. When we think of freelancers, the first thing that comes to our mind is flexibility, able to work within your own confines, remote work opportunities. And there are also challenges that come together with it when we think of inconsistent income, unstable working hours, lower or even no social protection at all for these workers. Interestingly, we also see these challenges not presented at the individual level, but it goes beyond at the macro level because it can disrupt established markets and firms. And we have seen Airbnb and Grab, if you would like to call them gig per se, even if they're not strictly gig, as one would say, they've actually disrupted innovation and stifled entrepreneurship to some extent. With that, I would like to introduce our distinguished panelists for this forum. We have 5 panelists on this forum. I will start with my extreme left. On my left is Ms. Pathma Subramaniam. She is the Senior Writer, Enterprise and Personal Wealth, The Edge Malaysia. Now, Padma has been interested in issues related to fairness, justice, and equity. In fact, as mentioned earlier by our PNC, she has just written an interesting article called The Perils of the Gig Economy, published in The Age. She is especially interested in how present structures can be used to uplift the poorest people who have access to neither opportunities or capital. She started her career as a reporter with Malaysia Kini, where she wrote extensively on major political developments in the country, social economy, and human rights issues. She now writes about responsible finance, impact investments, entrepreneurship, and disruptive technology in the Age Malaysia. Thank you for being here. Next, we have the second panelist, Mr. Sharizan Abdul Latif. He is the head campus initiative of Pitchin, as shown on his t-shirt, Pitchin, and Watchtower and Friends. For those who are not aware, Pitchin is best described as Malaysia's premier crowdfunding platform, and Watchtower is a tech accelerator company that invests in early stage tech startups. Mr. Sharizan has been actively involved at the campus level in developing ongoing programs for entrepreneurs and crowdfunding campaign managers, among others. In fact, what was interesting in his CV is that he anchored several projects, and one of which is especially attractive, is the supply, delivery, and testing of robotics equipment to 20 polytechnics across Malaysia, and advanced robot soccer strategy programming training program under the Polytechnic Management Department, Ministry of Higher Education. Yeah. He holds a Bachelor of Commerce and Management, Accounting and Finance from the Lincoln University, New Zealand, and University Tenaga Nasional. Our third panelist, Ms. Shireen Shariza Dato Abdul Ghani, is the co-founder and director of Sorga Ventures Sendirian Berhad. Sorga Ventures is the entity behind the creation of the gigx.com.my, a talent marketplace platform. Sorga Ventures is also spearheading the strategic aspects of sustainable development through responsible and impact investment initiatives. Prior to founding Sorga Ventures, Shireen was the Chief Executive Officer of Talent Corp 2016 to 2018 and the Director of Corporate Responsibility at Khazanah National Berhad from 2007 to 2016. Shireen holds 2 master degrees. One, studies in sustainability leadership from the Cambridge University, and the second, a master degree in public policy from the University of Malaya. The fourth panelist is Mr. Darzi Norhalim, Director of the Sharing Economy Ecosystem Division, Malaysia Digital Economic Corporation, also known in short as MDEC. Mr. Darzi joined MDEC in 2001 and currently heads the Sharing Economic Ecosystem Division. In his current capacity, he has been instrumental in creating policy framework and national programs to promote and grow the sharing economy industry in Malaysia for the benefit of both businesses and citizens. His expertise and experience covers the areas of government policy and strategy to develop the ICT industry as a new growth sector for the state economy and to increase the adoption of ICT by enterprises and citizens. He holds a degree, a Bachelor of Science Mechanical Engineering degree from the Brown University. And our final panelist is Mr. Roberto Benitello, CEO of the EU Malaysia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, in short known as the EUMCCI. Mr. Benitello has a wealth of experience of over 20 years in international relations and business facilitation. He started his career with EUMCCI in April 2016 when he joined the board of Chamber and was later appointed the chairman of the board of directors. He became the first CEO to leverage on for the EUMCCI, mainly because he was appointed to leverage on his capability and expertise in operations. Mr. Benitello holds a master degree in marketing from Lincoln University, UK, and a master in business administration from SDA Bocconi School of Management, Bocconi University, Italy. And I just came to find out that he is registered as a PhD candidate at the University of Malaya. Welcome to all our 5 panelists. I'm sure we're going to have a lively and engaging session with all of them. To start off our discussion, we know that the gig economy, 34% of the global workforce is freelancing in some capacity or the other, of which 38% are millennials. Yeah, roughly. Some figures are quite different. It's in between 38 to about 42%. So my first question I would like to pose for all panelists to respond, starting from Padma right up to Mr. Roberto. Should we actually take this gig economy seriously, or is it just peripheral and ephemeral to justify close attention at this stage? We'll take a circle, about 2 to 3 minutes per panelist. Yeah?
Hello? Yes, I obviously feel that, yes, it is going to make a difference, and I think it is the way forward, because work is no longer defined in that 9 to 5 kind of job. People don't expect to. I don't think most graduates hope to come into the workforce thinking that.
Closer.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So I do agree that it's going to change how work is done, and how work is how people what work is actually. And because a lot of people, I myself don't really like working in a 9 to 5 job. So, that's why I'm a journalist. So, but I also think that the current ecosystem doesn't provide for proper protection. And there needs to, in that area, I think a lot needs to be done.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, the way, personally, I think that it's already changing the employment landscape here in Malaysia and abroad, right? And for one thing, I have always been on my own, as either as an entrepreneur or as a freelancer of some sort. So I've always been comfortable in that sense. And I think nowadays there's a lot more people who are coming face to face on what it means to be a freelancer or to be involved in the gig economy, and are more comfortable within that framework, especially the young ones. So I tend to move around that circle quite a bit. Hence the T-shirt and the red socks. So, but I think it would be unwise to ignore the momentum that it's gaining at the moment. And of course, I would very much like to see better protection, right? But I don't think that whether the protection is there or not, it would stop people from getting into the gig economy, right? So that's just a bit from me.
Sharen, if I could interject, besides the question on taking the gig economy seriously, could you just tell us a bit on how this gig economy works? Based on your experience, yeah.
Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind invitation and introduction. If I can just have the slide go up, I won't make a presentation, but how I articulate the points, I'd like it to have a visual representation, so that then we have a visual or a picture in our head on these sort of trends, because sometimes it can be quite abstract. So when we look at the macro side of where this is heading, there are 3 main things, as you can see on the slide. So this is the digital economy. So people work with mobile devices everywhere, anywhere, right? And we are so connected. The other bit that we looked at is also the sharing economy. We spoke about that as well. And how then the gig economy is being the trend is moving towards that, simply because we have more tools and more access to various things that we do. So that's how we look at it. So when people ask me, is it a fad? No, it is real, it is here. There are statistics showing that there's a large number of people who are already on gig work, and we look at it in 3 parts as well. So the work itself, how we do our work and the tools that we use to work with, the workforce, then the policy and the environment around the people who are in the workforce, and the workplace, because all 3 of these are changing due to these 3 mega trends as we see it. The next slide, if you don't mind, thank you. It's the one with the balls. Next one. Next one. Okay, so we talk about statistics. This is the only slide with statistics that I will share with you. And there is a growing trend. A lot of companies are already saying that, in the next 5 years, 40% of their workforce is going to be coming from contingent workers. So these are gig workers. And the 56% say they need to engage gig workers because their current people in their organization do not have the kind of skill sets that they need for some of the things that needs to get done. And you look at the trends and you think it's millennials that's on this gig economy. Surprise, surprise, this is data coming from the Western world. We don't have enough data in Malaysia and in this region, right? So you see a large number of millennials, that's a given. There's also the Gen X somewhere in between and catching up. And where I find very interesting is that the baby boomers are on to gig economy as well. Because we look at people with deep experiences and their expertise and all that, and once they are pre-retirement or when they retire, sometimes they are lost in the economy. And we really need to plug into that as well. So I see the glass half full for gig economy because there's a lot of opportunities and a lot of talent that you can actually pull together to really work on various things based on their capacity, their capabilities, and on demand when they are ready, and in various means that they engage in work in the workforce and the workplace. Yeah, so that's the 2 slides. Thank you.
Darzi, can I have your take on this?
Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'd just like to talk a bit on the term gig economy, sharing economy, freelance economy. Before that, they also call it crowd economy, crowdsourcing. So what's the difference, right? Of course, it depends on how you look at things, where you come from, and there are, of course, many definitions coming from research and also consultant alike. Sharing economy, if I can define it a bit, is sharing of resources, sharing of assets, sharing of time. Resources, intangible asset or also tangible asset. Intangible asset could be your skill as well, right? So that's why we call sharing of, you share your asset, your expertise, for example, your programming talent, your writing talent, into gig economy, onto the platform as part of sharing economy. That's depend how you define it or how you argue about it. Then you have Uber, Airbnb, sharing of asset, and also sharing of time, because people drive your car, they also sharing their time. So, and there are, to one extreme, people define sharing as without monetary gain, without economic gain. But all over the world, even though they call it sharing economy, there is some gain, an economic gain out of it, right? Whether you share your skill, your time, your car, your asset, and all that. Gig economy, if you look at it, it started the word gig, right? Gig is you're doing a gig. You're doing a performance, you sing, right? In return for small amount of money. That's what happened, that's how it started. But now gig is more and beyond just a small performance. It could be a research work, consultancy work, high-end chief financial officer kind of work, right? So it has changed. The definition is not that small little gig you're doing. It has included from the lowest range of skill set to the highest professional skill set. People can call it doing a gig. But of course, if you ask the American recently, and they have this freelancer union, they don't like to call themselves gig. They call it freelancer. So that's how it is. So to me, whatever name you like to call it, it is disrupting not only the landscape of employment of industries, it also disrupting a number of sectors. Definitely logistic and transportation sector. You know Uber, you know Grab, logistic, you know now the lorry, the delivery services, freight, last mile services, all being disrupted by digital platform who use the power of the crowd, asset of the crowd. They are also disrupting tourism sector because there are many people involved. So definitely it will disrupt economic sectors.
Roberto, can I have your views on this?
Okay. Yes, here I am. Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you very much for the invitation. When I was first approached by, I think it was Imran in my office, said, Roberto, you need to go to this forum and you need to take a position. You need to be pro or con. So I'm not going to do that, I said. Because I think it's important to define, you know, the subject matter. In my view, there is a positive side of it and a negative side of it. For example, there are unskilled gig workers, okay, and these guys sometimes they don't have choice, okay. They are trapped in a kind of situation in some personal life circumstances for many different reasons. They're often exploited, okay. They don't have social security, they don't have those kind of things that other workers have. And there are the likes of, for example, Foodpanda, Grab. In Indonesia, there is a huge phenomenon called Gojek, courier services, etc. On the other side of the spectrum, you have skilled gig workers, okay? These guys have a vast choice. They really can pick. Sometimes they have skills that are extremely on demand. Say, for example, you know, data scientists or data analysts. These guys can actually name the price. You know, they say they can determine how much they want to be paid. They have a vast choice, so by definition, they are in control, and they can move from one job to another very swiftly, very rapidly, very quickly, but they are in control. That's really, really important to say that. Sometimes they are involved in several freelance projects at one time. Okay, that's also another big difference. These guys are coders, they're designers, they're data scientists, they're copywriters, they're trainers, they're coaches, they're HR professionals, they're artists, for example. If you want to see the spectrum of gig workers, for example, in ASEAN, you take a look at gig workers in Singapore on one side, and you take a look at gig workers in Indonesia on the other side. In Indonesia, it's the first typology that I mentioned, okay? And it's basically a problem. It's a social problem because, for example, in Indonesia, you may see that the employment level is not that high. The unemployment level is not that high. But the problem is that these people are not fully employed. All the people that on paper are employed, they're not fully employed. They're partially employed. And that is a problem. The advent, for example, of connectivity, e-commerce in Indonesia has dramatically changed the retail sector. And a lot of people have lost jobs. So the gig economy in Indonesia is something different, for example, than what it is in Singapore. Singapore, you have a number of very skilled professionals who play with gig economy because they take a personal advantage out of it. They make more money, they have more choice, they have more freedom, they have much better quality of life sometimes. You know, they decide to devote their attention to other things in life and they become gig workers because of choice. So it's important to have this distinction, because I saw other questions, the questions that you have suggested. You know, how should the academia and universities deal with students in view of them becoming gig workers? This distinction will help us answering that question.
Thank you. Before we move on to the implications of the gig economy for the higher education, which is at the heart of all of us sitting here, I'd just like to get some views on the employee's perspective. Shireen, if I could just ask you a bit, will companies, I mean, you deal with gig workers, so will companies, or you engage in their services, or you channel their services, do you think companies would actually value years of working experience or the number of gigs? And we also notice in the case of Asia Pacific, as Padma has cited a report, 84% of talent managers in Asia Pacific prefer gig workers vis-a-vis US, which is only about 47%. Yeah. So can you just give me some insights into what employers look for?
Yeah, thank you. It's a value proposition for both the gig and the companies. I think with the trend that we are looking at, the days of talent being in the company for many years is over. People go in, they do certain things, and then they move on and they go on to other sort of projects or other companies, right? So we have to face that as a reality. There will be companies that require permanent workers because of the nature of their business. Manufacturing, for example. But I'll give you an example of a manufacturing that does the gig work in a very innovative way. So the value proposition for companies is that if I don't have that talent in my organization, and that talent only works on demand, does that mean I lose that skill and that expertise? Certainly not, right? And some companies will have different jobs that requires only project teams. 6 months and you're done. They don't have a position, a full-time position for that particular talent. So then it's a cost efficiency sort of answer to companies. It's also the fact that if I don't have that talent in my organization, I can acquire them on a rent basis. So if you can rent our homes, we can rent our cars, we can certainly rent talent. And really the trust and the element around, renting your home, renting your car, renting your talent is the same thing. It's how you then design the processes that then leverages on that opportunity rather than saying, I can't do this. And you're missing out on a whole bunch of very highly talented and highly qualified people who work on demand. That's already a reality, right? So that it's a choice that companies make. And from discussing and engaging with a lot of companies, they know that that is the reality now. And they like that balance. I have a number of people that work full-time for me. I need to because I have to run operations. But for certain specific type work, it's project-based and they need it for a certain amount of time, they do it. I'll go back to the manufacturing example. Carex, they make condoms, right? So they want to sort of reduce the number of foreign workers in their operations. So what they do is they work with the community. These are women who don't work. So between the ladies who, the mothers who send their children in the morning, and by the time they pick them up in the afternoon, there's a block of time that they can do stuff. So what they do is they go to Carex and they pack the condoms. And you get paid based on the boxes that you pack, right? So it's a win-win for them. The Carex in the community, they work with moms who need the extra income. And, they reduce their dependency on foreign workers. So you really need to think of very innovative ways on how you engage your talent in various ways of how you actually get work done. It doesn't necessarily mean it's permanent full-time workers that needs to be part of your workforce, or all of your workforce. Right?
So I understand it that it's basically project-based work. It's cost-efficient for the firm. But looking at it from the other perspective, from the individual's perspective, sometimes you need some amount of discipline. in the sense like, yeah, to be relevant to the workplace, yeah? Because gig work is very competitive out there. Sharizan, what do you think about stability and mentorship, which could be lacking for gig workers, looking at it from the individual side, yeah? Yeah.
Well, I guess as one person who has been doing gig work since God knows when, I might share some of the things that I've done personally, right? So I think when you're out there in the gig economy, right, the responsibility of improving yourself falls to yourself. So you develop your own career path, you develop your own baseline reputation that you want to be that you want to present out to the marketplace, right? And then that reputation snowballs, you see. The more you go out there, the more you present yourself, the more you apply yourself to this industry, right? The more people get to know you, the more people understand the outcome of your work. And the higher value people will put, or businesses would put, into what you can accomplish, you see. So that's different from how talents are being managed within an organization. So when you're out there independent, it's up to you to improve yourself, to add on to your knowledge, and to better your output in terms of the industry.
So I guess it goes back to this issue of being relevant, making yourself relevant to actually get some gig work done. Otherwise, you have to compete with the others, yeah? So because they lose out on mentorship as traditional employees would, yeah? In some sense, yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say they lose out,
yeah.
But you have to actively seek those mentors out. That's what I do on an ongoing basis. I actually approach people to become my mentor, you see. And you know, Sam is one of my mentors. He teaches me a lot about what what crowdfunding is, and I had to keep up with the learning that he has done over the years. You see. So.
Okay, coming to this issue of project-based tasks, Padma, if I could just ask you, why is it that Asia-Pacific talent managers have a much higher preference for these gig workers relative to the US, let's say, besides cost consideration, efficiency, specialized skills like you would that you have mentioned, yeah?
I think, okay, I think that the problem is, it could be because of language. I guess when you refer to Asia Pacific, I think they're specifically referring to countries like Singapore, Malaysia, not so much the region, the other countries in the region, because I think most of us already speak in English, and well, like it or not, it is more cost effective, right? Because the wages are still low, and yeah, actually that I would feel is one of the top reasons, and maybe skill, because like Roberto had said earlier, a lot of quite a number of skilled workers are based in like countries like Singapore, so you'd see that to be quite a an opportunity for them to seek out these workers on a project basis, right? That would be my take on why, because the report didn't exactly cite why, the reason.
Roberto, if I could just pose a question on this issue of gig economy stifling entrepreneurship. On one hand, we think, the gig economy allows you to harness your harness your skills of the individual. But there are also counter arguments that some gigs have stifled new startups. Yeah. What would you think about that based on your experience dealing with big EU companies? Yeah.
Okay, let me just go back a second, if I may. Employers are, I wrote it down, opportunists. Okay. And I'm running a company, and you give me the choice to have everybody hired on a full-time basis, or run a lean operation and have 30% of my workforce there with permanent contracts, and 70% of my workforce that I can actually fire anytime I want, yeah? Which one would you think I choose? So it's really important to understand the context here. The question, for example, why is it that in ASEAN countries gig workers are so popular? I think one consideration is look at the regulatory framework, okay, that regulates, for example, labor law or contractual law and stuff like that. So some of the gig workers that are allowed to do gig work here, for example, they wouldn't be allowed to do the same gig work in European countries, okay? You know, like bikers or stuff like that. They need to have much more protection. They need to be treated in a different way. In the United States, for example, if you look at what happened in 2017, 2018, some regulations have been introduced to protect gig workers, not from a social benefit standpoint, social security standpoint, because there the United States is a bit lacking. They asked for example, to be safeguarded in terms of contracts. A lot of these gig workers did work and they didn't get paid, okay? And it was extremely difficult for them to get the contracts that were very, very cheap contracts, because, you know, nobody wanted to spend money on legal fees to draft big, complicated contracts. They would find it very difficult to enforce this type of things. Now they have introduced a legislation in the United States, in New York actually, that safeguard gig workers for that particular thing. So the legal framework in terms of social security, insurance, contracts, and all the rest is really important. And I think it's something that needs to be developed further in ASEAN and also in Malaysia. Last year, remember in January last year, we had our first event. There was the CEO of EPF who came, and it was my idea to come up with this gig economy, okay? Because I saw that coming, but I also saw that this phenomenon would have massive implication on, for example, the EPF, okay? And other similar funds around the world in other countries, okay? This type of funds, okay, they need to adapt themselves to this type of work. Otherwise, they're going to have big holes moving forward, okay? So there must be a way to understand the phenomenon and understand how to extract taxation, for example, from these gig workers, those who can pay, and also give them some social security, you know, safety nets and safeguards. So I think this is important to say. Your question was about entrepreneurship and gig work. On the positive side, gig work has created a new type of entrepreneur, the solitary entrepreneur. Now, if you want to be an entrepreneur, especially in the tech sector, you can have your laptop computer, go to your Starbucks, although I don't really like Starbucks, but you know, what would be a Malaysian equivalent, I don't know. Yeah, KPPI. And do your business from there. And I can assure you that there is such a huge network of collaborators, workers, suppliers, stakeholders that you can contact from your computer, and these guys, and it's unbelievable. A friend of mine, an Italian friend of mine, recently opened a company and is selling mattresses online. It's a very, very, very good idea. I won't tell you the brand because I don't want to give him free advertising. But he's doing everything by himself, and he's got a network of people, of collaborators, of people working for him and with him, and he's this solitary entrepreneur. And this is the beauty of it, and this is one of the positive sides that, in my point of view, is going to change the paradigm in a certain way, but in a positive way.
From the employee's perspective, I'll hold the thought on the implications, legal implications in terms of drafting of contracts as we go on to our second theme that we are quite interested, being from the academia. The academia is actually supposed to be a good test market for the gig economy. In fact, there's a recent book by Kim Tolley on professors in the gig economy. Yeah, so I'd just like to probably pose this question to Dazi. How do you think the gig economy is reshaping higher education? Or what is the role of higher education in this new nature of work, or future of work, if you would like to call it?
I think the higher education is creating the talent for industry. That's very straightforward, whether it is in the traditional economy or the gig economy. As the technology move, the industry grow, focus into certain areas, the talent actually match most of the time, we try to match the industry requirement. It's just that the way now, instead of we producing talent as a worker to a corporation, we are producing talent as a worker as well as a freelancer, as individual entrepreneurs. I would like to put it that way, because I think every freelancer is also an individual entrepreneur, and this individual entrepreneur can actually form a group of 3, group of 5, become SME micro entrepreneurs. And the beauty of this gig economy, especially in this digital economy era, whereby when you are doing entrepreneur, you are doing entrepreneur at the global level. Your market, your client, straight away become international client, right? In traditional economy, you probably just reach out to people around you, people in your area, people in your country. But here, if you are talent in, for example, a creative talent, for example, you can get a job from the US, from Europe, right? So at the end of the day, it's just about how we produce talent, create talent that are meeting the needs of the industry. Gig economy, traditional economy, the form of employment is just a form. It could be through platform, through what we call gig economy, or through traditional employment. But I think the industry will continue to evolve. I wouldn't want to say that gig economy will replace traditional employment, right? Traditional employment will stay, but there are more and more people, the gig workers will be there. And then we look at the reason why people go into gig economy, why companies go into gig economy. There are many reasons. For Indonesian market, most likely it would be to have additional income. I don't mind doing more work to get additional income. For those people in Singapore, or some people in Malaysia as well, in the high-end, high-value jobs. Why Asians wanting to do this? Because very simple reason, for example, is exchange rate. Right? For a Malaysian to get paid doing creative work, it be paid in the US dollars, is much more, 4 times more what he can get from a company based in Kuala Lumpur. So why don't I take it, right? These are the things. And then companies, of course, there are companies who think that by going into gig economy, they think they're going to get a cheap labor. There are companies who do that. But there are also companies like Fortune 500 companies, they go into gig economy because they couldn't find the right talent within their organization. And also for reason of positioning their product. I'll give you an example. Fortune 500 companies like Procter & Gamble, even companies like Lego, they use this platform whereby they get input. They use talent outside of their organization to get input on design. Why they want to do this? For example, they want to do for a product that meant for mothers. They would get community of mothers outside the organization to give input, and they pay them. So in a way, you are actually positioning a new product line into the mothers community. So there are different reasons why companies go into this gig economy. It could be product positioning, testing a new product. Lego, for example, I want to know whether this team of toys will get attraction or not. So I put it out there, get people input, what kind of team they want, what kind of design, what kind of new toy they like to have. So they know in advance who are the people, who are the market. So different reasons, therefore, getting cheap labor. I don't doubt that there are companies who are doing that, but there are also for other reasons.
Shireen, you mentioned about the gig workers are not just confined to millennials.
Yep.
You have people in their 40s onwards. Now, what are the implications of this for lifelong education? How the universities can actually play a role in this form? And the second thing, if I could pick from Mr. Dazi, he mentioned about shifting jobs.
Yeah.
Meaning which programs should now actually nurture students with more flexible skills. Sometimes a 4-year degree program, builds you to a single career path. You could say it could be less flexible. If I could be a bit pessimistic, I mean, what are your views on that? Yeah.
Maybe just take off from what was said earlier with regards to talent, the companies and various reasons, right? So when I was wearing my Talent Corp hat, we used to look for global talents, our Malaysians abroad. My former colleague is in the room. And, it's a tough sell to ask them to return, right? Because they've been in the country, in the host country many, many years. Returning is not an easy decision. So with the gig economy, and you have the right kind of platform, it's borderless. You can work from, you can get a Malaysian in Norway to work for you, and you're domiciled here in Malaysia. So there's no issue about borders now actually defining who works for who and what they can do. So I think it's a fantastic way of actually leveraging on technology to get connected to talent all over the globe. Yeah. So,
but wouldn't that's challenge?
Fantastic.
Yeah, wouldn't that challenge the higher education system, what we have now? Yeah.
Okay. Maybe what I will say will be slightly controversial. But to be fair, the universities are really evolving, and they're looking at these trends. And I hear your Datuk VC saying that there is a review of curriculum and all that. That is important because the world out there is moving in such a pace that nobody can keep up. Universities got to move faster. You really need to look at transferable skills, they call it, right? So you can have a base degree of an engineer, but you can do various things that then makes you an even more high value talent, right? So what kind of things are you going to actually now infuse in your curriculum that then sort of makes that engineer relatable and can do more things beyond the engineering role that he has? I'll give you an example of, in Korea, engineers are very highly sought after, but engineers who actually then market the products, because these engineers can really talk about the intricacy of that product. So you have an engineer who is a marketing expert. So those are the kind of, refreshment or, revision or to refresh the curriculum to look at that, because transferable skills is something then makes you as a high value talent. And if a university actually provides that kind of education, lifelong learning and everything else, you do, very specific, blocks of things that people can learn that's practical, that they can use and the industry want, then that supports the academic qualification that you have. Right? So that's where we see it from a practitioner point of view. You're churning out really great talent. The gap is where they need to have those kind of transferable skills that then companies will say, good, I want this engineer because he can go and market my products. So I get, a valuable sort of input from that talent.
Sharizan, maybe you could actually speak a bit on how the curriculum could infuse that kind of project-based concepts based on your experience, yeah?
Well, the way I see it, right, a lot of graduates go out there and then they expect to be put into a particular capacity of work, right? And then they lack the ability to grow themselves towards jobs which are more of value to the industry. Now, what is interesting is that in the current, during the last graduate traces survey, 255,000 graduates, 15% of that 255,000 graduates are unemployed, but only a meager 2% choose to work for themselves. So that means that they sit around and then they don't go out there and try out new things. there is such thing as creating job for yourself, I know because I've been doing it all this while. But it involves going out there and putting yourself in very uncomfortable situations where you have to test out whether you can actually create value in those areas or not. But I think university has a lot of role to play here to maybe open up the access to those kind of work, right? To engage with the industry on that capacity, as opposed to looking at employability from a job perspective, right? Maybe look at employability from the bigger scope of providing value, creating value to the industry, or even creating value in an entrepreneurship capacity, right? So I think there's a lot of area that can be explored, but maybe there's a lack of effort towards it. On our part, we try to deploy these kind of programs, right, within our own capacity and within our own business framework. But, to be fair, we are a private company, so we do have a very limited reach in that sense, right?
Padma, if I could just ask one final question on the implications for higher education. As students and staff of the university, a lot of us engage the services of proof editors, copy editors. Now, there is this concern from the university's perspective that these proof editors go beyond a legitimate intervention when they help students improve their work than actually doing copy editing per se. You have mentioned abuses in our discussion. We have mentioned abuses of gig work, abuses towards gig workers who get cheated. But there's also this case of undesirable intervention in the university because of this engagement. What do you think about this, and how could we, what are your views on this? Yeah.
Hazards of the job.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
No, I think that adaptability is something that higher education should think about. Educational institutions should think about, because, like you said, a 4-year course just sets you on a career path. But what if that career does not exist 20 years on, right? So, if I guess this is, I don't know how to say it, more philosophical, in the sense that you have to train your students to be able to adapt, right? I have no suggestions, I'm no expert on this matter, but I'm thinking that, provide access to shorter courses and maybe encourage them to, like what Shah said, go out and, engage people, like, train them to be better at approaching people and, basically going out and work on yourself first, right? About abuses, sorry, I didn't, can you please
You
repeat
talked
that?
about abuses of gig workers not being paid, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, being
Yeah, I think as Roberto mentioned earlier, like in some countries, like in more developed countries, of course, labor laws are much better, and a lot of work that we do here cannot, you cannot do it there. So I think that's why a lot of exploitation happens. You mentioned Asia Pacific, the report where a lot of talent managers prefer hiring, but this could be also because of that exploitation, right? But and like it was earlier said from about the exchange rate and all that. So I think the only way to work about exploitation is to have better labor laws and community engagement, and that's the only way you can improve protection, right?
Okay. We'll just take 5 minutes to look at the implications for the economy and policy before we open up the floor to questions from the participants. A very quick opinion from the panelists on, we talked about laws, labor laws. Like we note that in Oregon is actually working on developing state-sponsored retirement plan for freelance workers. So they're already on the verge of it, because we have mentioned so much that workers are not given, gig workers are not given social protection. So Roberto, probably you want to give us some views of the Europe case and how they're handling, because I understand that there's pressure for the EU government to provide more protection for these gig workers, how they're going about this.
They're very scared. They're very scared because there are some countries, take France, for example, take Italy, where the pension system, okay? So in Italy, when you reach 65 or 67, I think now, you get a state pension and you are really, you know, a happy guy. This is not happening anymore because we've run out of money. So they're changing the rules of the game every day, and they're saying, you know, instead of 63, you go pension 65, and then 67, then 70, and then you will never get the money because something has happened. You don't really fulfill the requirements. So it's a big problem. So finding a way to get these people to pay and get the funds, but the bottom line is that the whole system will have to be thought through again. Yeah. So and it's a big problem. Can I just link back to what you were asking before? You said, you know, what should academia do, and how should academia, you know, somehow modify, change, adapt the curriculum to. I want to bring the discussion to, you know, what's called the Industry 4.0, and that is, you know, a high level of automation, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and other things, and other hyperconnectivity, and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that some of you have gone to YouTube and checked some videos. I mean, you should do it recently and see what is automation doing in factories, for example. You know, there are factories where you don't see anybody working. You only see robots moving everything, you know, completely manufacturing facilities, whole manufacturing facility, totally automated. You see, for example, the artificial intelligence is now coming up with algorithms to do anything, to do the work of accountants, to do the work of, you know, a lot of professionals that up until a few years ago, it was unthinkable that a machine could do that. So what should universities do? They should try to foresee this, you know, and try to foresee that a lot of these jobs, the jobs that we thought they would last forever, they would go on forever, they're not going to be there, but not just 20 years from now, 2 years from now. And this is really important because it's really important to get the skills, acquire the skills that would allow you guys, especially the students, to do a job that will be there 5 years from now. This is extremely important, and try to have that vision, try to acquire that vision. It's really important, especially for the young generations, because we are in a period of profound transformation. Everything that we knew is not going to be in a few years from now. So it's really important to try and understand where the things are moving. Academia has got a responsibility, but the students themselves, when they have to choose what to do, you know, they cannot choose to do all mass communication. You know, they need to choose things that will give them the chance to get a job, you know, mathematics, physics, science. You know, they need to become data analysts, or if they want, they need to become artists, because art will be sought after, will be something that computers and artificial intelligence will not be able to emulate, but something that will give them a competitive advantage vis-a-vis technology, vis-a-vis artificial intelligence, vis-a-vis automation. Sorry, I just wanted to point this out.
Thank you. Just to conclude on a few points, we have seen the gig economy has a lot to offer, a lot of opportunities. Whether we like it or not, it is there and it will be there, it will grow. There will be a proliferation of gig jobs. It's a matter of choice for some, and for some it's a default, especially graduates who cannot seek permanent employment, they go for the gig. Of course, there are some fears that they become permanently temporary. For those who do not understand the gig per se, yeah? But the millennial workforce is embracing the gig economy very well, and I think it will be there for some time. It challenges existing business models, labor management practices, and regulations. As pointed out, we need some active form of labor market policies. With that, can I open up the floor to questions? For your questions, could you kindly state your name, institution, and whom you're directing, which panelist you would like your question, that you're directing your question to?
Well, I have there's a question there.
Hello. Hello, I'm Hanif. Hi. Is it my turn to ask a question?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Okay, so my question is open to all of the panelists. I'm Hanif from Talent Network. So what we do is we help university students and we empower them by providing them gigs from SME for them to upskill their skills. So as we are moving forward, as we are digitizing our economy, what we realize is we have this new form of economy, which is gig economy and sharing economy, and it is good. I mean, some say it is good, some say it is bad. You know, some say it's a innovation, it's a disruptive innovation. But the way I see it is, we are chasing. We are chasing. Number one is companies are chasing for more profits. They are trying to cut costs, and millennials, we are chasing freedom. So because these two things exist, that's why there's sharing economy and gig economy. But as we move towards that, we are making our economy, we are dehumanizing our economy. So my question is, as we move forward towards this innovative economy, how do we actually humanize back the economy? Because as we move forward towards gig economy, we will not interact with our co-workers. We will just, be in front of the screens, focusing on what we do. So, yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, can I take that? The answer is no. Humans are naturally social beings. I know that for a fact. I can work on my own for X number of hours, that's it. Then I got to go and talk to people. I got to collaborate with other people. So you're right in the sense that the tools melalikan kita, right? We lose touch of relationships with people. But when you work and when you want to get ideas and all that, you got to work with people. So I don't think you remove being a human when you work in a gig economy or whatever. It gets very lonely. And the team that I work with are all on gigs, and then we meet with each other very regularly, because then that's where we churn ideas and we exchange views and all that. So I would say no, it's not dehumanizing. It's how you manage your relationship with each other. Without the tools, you can still not be talking to each other in the same room, right? So it boils down to that actually. Sorry.
If I may, I think there are two components in your question. One is a social one that has just been answered, and I totally agree with that. The other one is a component of freedom. You said, how do we stay free? Okay, you stay free by acquiring skills that are required, that are relevant. Okay, you see in the phenomenon of gig work. Okay, you're not free when you are unskilled and you go and work for Food Panda. Yeah, you are skilled and you are a data analyst. Okay, they come and want you to work for them every single day. You keep on receiving requests. So the way you skill yourself is extremely important because it gives you freedom. And that allows you to move from slavery to a certain extent to be a gig worker that can exploit a situation, be free, have a good quality of life, and make a lot of money. Okay? In the middle, there are a number of personal circumstances that do not allow everybody to acquire those skills. The world is unfair, we know that. but that's how it is, you know. There's one side of the spectrum, the other side, and a lot of shades of grays in the middle.
I'm just going to say just a little bit, human being is a social animal, so it will remain that way. If you look at this freelance economy, how it grows, gig economy, there are also support systems actually that need to be built for this to happen actually. Even though you work at home using all the tools, you can't do that for a long time. So that's why they have freelancer community, peer-to-peer community doing the same thing. Even if you drive a Grab, you will still network with another Grab drivers or of your whatever work they are doing. You can't be doing it alone. You can't be receiving instruction through your mobile phone and start doing work and behave like a robot. So that will not happen. So even when the transaction happen, what is happening actually? This platform address trust issues. Human interact with another human being is about trust. Whether I can trust the gig worker on the other side, whether I can trust the company on the other end, whether they're gonna pay me or not. So that's why this digital platform address trust issues. That's why they have your background, your credibility, your ratings and things like that. So it's just addressing trust issues. These trust issues that always be there, will always be there between one human to another human, whether it represents a company or individual. It's just a different way of addressing it. Maybe efficient way to a certain extent, but it's not a foolproof way anyway. People can still do wonders with that.
Okay. More questions, please? Yeah.
Hi, Assalamualaikum, very good afternoon. My name is Muhammad Nazrul. Currently working with one telcos in Malaysia. I have two questions. First one is the liberal art degree is the answer to embrace the gig economy. This is an open question to all panelists. Second question is on the wealth creation for the labor in the gig economy. From the discussion just now, we understood that those owner of the platform, owner of the capital, seem to be able to gain something from their investment. But how about the impact to the unskilled labor, the driver of the Grabs, the food panda, a helper? How about them? We might see this as the exploitation of labor because the wealth still being concentrated to those that own the platform and the owner of the capitals. This is an open question to our panel.
Well, I'll try to answer that because I think it goes back to what do you provide. You know, if you can provide a high value service, right, then you are not easily replaceable, and you can put high value to what you're doing, right? That's the whole tricky part right there. Because if you talk about employment, the traditional employment, out of the 800,000 jobs recently created, right, 80% of them are low-value jobs, paying less than 2,000 ringgit a month, you know? And then the whole challenge becomes not to get a job, but to compete for the few jobs that pay you the right value. Now, it's the same thing with gig economy. I think I agree with the fact that it doesn't change the nature of competition, you know? It only changed the playing field somewhat, you know? And what I appreciate about being a gig economy worker, or whatever you want to call it, or entrepreneurs, or whatever, right, is that the onus, the responsibility falls back on you individually. How you chart your costs, how you improve yourself, how do you move yourself from low value services to a higher value services. Of course, I would love to see university help us out in this area. This is, you know, one of the key drivers that I'm trying to get out there, right? But at the moment, it falls on you individually. You see, all the graduates out there that, you know, maybe struggle to find a job, then you go out there and you create that job. There's a lot of way to do that, you know. It's just a matter of finding the right people, connecting to the right people. So no, you know, I don't think we're going to retreat back to our cocoon and work in the cave, right? We do go out there and engage. That's how you create value. That's how you create jobs for yourself. So, end of the day, right, of course, there comes a point where protection or against exploitation would be greatly appreciated. But before that time comes, right, then you have the power within you to ensure that you don't get exploited. And the easiest way to do that is to move towards a higher value chain. Yeah?
Maybe I can add, because I am a platform owner. It's called gigx.com.my. It's actually the intent of why you create the platform. If you have a vision or an intent that you want to create a platform that opens up opportunities to companies and to people, then the intent is not about profit making, right? Whatever you gain out of it, it will happen as a consequence. You got to think about the social and the responsible way of how you design your platform so that the talent is secured. They have access to retirement savings. It's in the interest of EPF to partner with us, for example, and say that if you go on a gig job on the platform, EPF will ensure that there is X saving. You opt into that scheme because individuals can have their own EPF account. So then, it's up to you to say, okay, I opt in, it's already settled. When I get paid, a percentage already goes into my retirement savings. So if you do it in a very responsible way and care, and you understand that you develop the platform for reasons that are not purely financial, then the platform has got a very strong chance of being successful. Because you're honest about what you want to do, you're transparent about who benefits on what, and you actually ensure that security of the talent and the company is assured. So you don't have to scale too big and get out of control with so many things in your platform that really distracts you from the core of why you design it. You design it for a purpose, and the purpose is to actually unlock opportunities for companies and for people. Right? And if you look at the trend just now, the baby boomers, right? There's a significant trend, you see that. Why? Because we're living longer. And when there is no retirement age now, because you still need to work for your livelihood in whatever way you work, right? So if people retire and that's it, there's no option for them, then the social cost of it is higher. Countries will have to pay for higher, healthcare services and all that, because you have a big number who are not, earning an income. So why can't a gig economy platform provides that for you, right? So that's why we see the trend. So when we look at it, there is a very social sort of imperative on looking at gig economy in a holistic way, and you got to be very responsible about it. And the people who go on to gig, they like I said, forced saving. You opt out on your own if you don't want it, but otherwise it's built into the fee that you get paid. Then it's a good outcome for all. I'm very passionate about this because I see that from a talent perspective, I see that from a company perspective, I see it from a country perspective. You've got to get your best talent at work in the economy, whether it's gig, permanent, whatever, they are part of that economy. So that's a very important point for the development of Malaysia, or any country for that matter.
I actually would like to add on to that query. I also pose a question to our representative from MDAC, right? The question about the unskilled workers, the wealth creation and them being protected, I think I'm very pessimistic. And yes, it helps that if you're a skilled worker, of course, it works. But what do you do if you're not? And how do you break away from that chains, that circle? How someone has to intervene. So I would just like to pose an additional question to that, because clearly I would like to listen from a government, because clearly you need an authority. The regulator needs to come in and set standards, right? So yes, we can go out and you can engage people, and you can, if you're a skilled worker, you know you're built with that. You have the capability, you have that skills to approach the right people, you know, to put yourself out there and get the kind of jobs you need or you want. But what if you're not unskilled? Or what if you're unskilled, and what do you do then? So what is the government's response to this? Hazards of the job.
Yes, okay.
Before I answer that, it's about global competition. When you compete, even in a skilled job, right? For example, there's no protection. You are competing against the world. A company residing in KL, a company residing in Sydney, can use talent from all over the world because the platform is open platform. So even if you are talented, you have certain skill, you go into platforms, you are competing with the rest of the world who have similar skill, similar competency like you. That's the world is going to be, right? This is a smaller world. The world is getting smaller and smaller. That's how people interact. That's how employer and employees going to interact over platform. It doesn't matter you are located somewhere half around the globe. So what university need to do is to produce globally competitive talent in whatever you do. And then you have another part of the equation, where's the robots. I saw robots just now on the screen, right? So you have to include all this automation come into play, right? So basically all this, even the small paying job you're talking about, right? The unskilled job soon is going to be replaced by robots. Maybe Grab driver in 10 years when they have automotive vehicles, you don't have a job anymore, right? Grab driver, there's no opportunity to drive Grab because the vehicle is just auto drive, right? You just press where you want to go, where you're from. So the repetitive job, the manual job, you can expect is going to be replaced by robots. So what human being going to do is it's a higher skill. Then later on, when they introduce AI, the higher skill also being replaced by robots. So what can government do? Coming back to your question, first we are competing with the world. If you're producing talent, make sure that talents can compete with the world because the world is getting smaller. It's not for any company. It's for the companies of the world, right? The one that pay higher definitely are the most competitive one. If you have no skill, you're worried about you being replaced by a robot. That is more worrying than how to climb the ladder, right? Even if you don't know how to climb the ladder. The thing is right now, human beings go through stages. Even jobs are going through stages, right? For now, how government treat this sharing economy, or even the industry treat like sharing economy of Grab driver, Airbnb, delivery services, Food Panda, things like that. We see that as opportunity for people to supplement their income. We don't want our people to become working as Food Panda as their lifelong profession, doing just that, right? So basically, as human being, there's developmental that need to happen, right? You have to move up your skill. You don't want to end up being a Grab driver for the rest of your life. So we, from the government side, we see that as an opportunity to supplement or increase or provide additional income. Not you choose to be that because that's what you want to do. We don't want that, right? Then we're talking about exploitation of labor, right? It's obvious the fight between the taxi driver and the Grab driver, things like that, right? Because Grab driver can provide you much cheaper, things like that. So that's what happened when you do free economy, right? So this is the service that I think I would want to do, right? For this, I'm okay to get this kind of pay. Right? So that's the free economy. Then, of course, right now, what you heard in the news is between taxi driver and Grab. Sooner or later, or maybe it's happening already, it's between the hoteliers and the Airbnb right? It goes into all other sectors after this. So we need to balance this. What is the graphs actually? Because it's unlevel playing field between the incumbents, the industry incumbents, and this gig economy or the platform economy players, right? For example, the Airbnb, they rent their homes, right? You don't have to pay commercial rates for your electricity, for your astro, for whatever services. Well, the hotels, people different rate. Taxi drivers have all kind of fees, all kind of whatever, right? They have to pay. Well, the Grab driver don't have to pay anything. So maybe the role of government is to make sure that, to balance the playing field, because then the incumbents and the gig workers or the freelancer can coexist. Because not all the time the incumbents can actually meet all the services or demand of the market. So it has to learn to coexist. That, I think, the government needs to play the role to make sure that coexist happen in the ecosystem. It could be in form of policy, it could be a form of regulation. So, of course, technology change every day. And as a government, any government of the world always play catch up with the technology, because the technology moves faster than the framework or the regulation. So what we need to do is continue and make sure that everyone is actually the players, the stakeholders are rightfully or addressed.
Questions?
Prof, there's a question
Yeah.
here. There's an opinion that the future of education will involve stackable programs, electronic badges, and highly tailored skill-based qualifications, which can be available via online platforms like Coursera. We still need universities, since gig workers will be selecting the skill sets that are highly sought after in the gig market, rather than normal university degrees. Yeah, so do we still need universities, basically? Yeah, I mean...
Can I? Okay. Now, you mentioned something that is very dear to me, this massive open online courses. It's a very interesting subject, and I think it goes back to a little bit to the subject of platforms. So these guys are providing education in a different way, in a different format. There is a huge space for these people going forward, in my point of view, my personal opinion, not just for academia to take some of the courses and transfer them online, and utilizing some of the multimedia and new technologies to deliver courses in a more interesting way and more efficient way. But there's a lot of room for companies, for example, from the private sectors, trainers, providers of vocational training, for example, and so on, to use these platforms and provide some ad hoc training. So I'm very close to one of these companies, because I just studied the business model, and I think it's extremely interesting moving forward to see the potential of these platforms in providing learning opportunities to a lot of actors in the industry.
I think you have to look at both. It's augmented, kind of complementary. If you don't offer it online, then they will go somewhere else, right? So, institutions that's 100 years old already now offering short courses, 3 months, data analyst, done, and it's, whatever the university. So we need to think about how we do that and digitize the fantastic content and history of this university, at least, and how you make it more accessible to everybody around the world. Why not, right? So yes, we do need universities, but they need to modernize, if I can say that.
I think there's one more question, yeah.
Hi. My name is Aiman. I'm from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences from University of Malaya. So I have a question for all the panelists about the future of work. So I'm assuming that there's quite a significant proportion of workers in the gig economy or the sharing economy who are engaged in these activities as a temporary measure when they are in between jobs, you want to look for some income, easy, accessible income. And there are also a large proportion who are doing it to supplement the existing full-time work. So there is still a dependency on full-time employment. At the same time, there are some activities in the gig economy or the sharing economy that will be affected by the Industry Revolution 4.0. Things like Uber are developing automated cars and all that. At the same time, we've also somewhat equated working for Food Panda as a form of modern slavery or something like that. And we've said that we don't want people to become Food Panda drivers as a long-term career and all that. So my question is...
I said that, but not disrespect meant for Food Panda, please.
Sure, okay. So my question for the panelists is the gig economy or the sharing economy really the way forward in terms of the future of work? Or is this just a sort of I don't want to say fad, but obviously it's brought some good things in terms of the employment scene, is allowed us to enjoy freedom and we can spend more time with families and all that, but is it really the way forward? Or will we always be depending on full-time employment as a source of livelihood and income?
You know one thing that I personally believe, and very, very controversial. Moving forward, there will not be jobs for everybody. This is, again, a personal opinion, and it's strongly backed by scientific evidence. But if you look at what automation is doing in terms of, production of goods and services and so on and so forth, and if you see, as I said before, what's happening inside factories, you would understand, it very easily that there won't be jobs for everybody in the future. So this is happening, okay? And gig work somehow is a manifestation of that, because a lot of the dynamics in the job market are changing, and thinking that you can go back and undo many of these things sometimes is wishful thinking. Sorry for being very direct. We live in a world that is extremely interconnected. The global economy is so interconnected that the British who wanted to exit the European Union are finding extremely difficult because they had not thought about all the implications of this interconnectedness. And it's very difficult for anybody to think about what's happening out there. So if somebody tells you, oh, tomorrow I want to be Italy by itself, not European Union anymore, we want to trade only with Italy, we just want to be insular, we just want to be on our own, it's impossible. It's impossible to stop workers from going somewhere else. It's impossible to stop what's happening. It's really possible to mitigate the bad things, okay? But in order to do that, you need to realistically look at what's happening without any wishful thinking. And the mitigation becomes something that you can do, but in a realistic way. That's my personal opinion.
Well, speaking about realistic point of view, right? One out of 3 Americans are working on their own for themselves, right? 7 out of 10 out of those people who went to work for their own are not coming back to traditional employment, right? So again, you have to ask yourself, these are not just temporary trends. It's actually a general movement towards something different, And the way I see it, right, the best way to protect yourself from being exploited in this industry, in this kind of working environment, is that for you to equip yourself with knowledge. There's no substitute for that, you increase your skill, you increase your value as a human being, as a person, then automatically the value which is given upon you for the work that you do will increase. You know, there is a direct correlation to that. So I would love to see university play a bigger role in that, because maybe I'm not saying that the traditional degree would be obsolete. I still believe in it somewhat. You know, I'm a product of it. Whatever good I am today is because of it, right? But I would like to see it evolve beyond that. You know, how does it adapt to a changing employment environment? How does it adapt? How do we, as workers, adapt to different needs to our knowledge? You know, I've been doing that on my own ever since I left university. But now I can share that with currently what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to share that with universities so that we can share it with the students on how they can evolve in terms of supplying themselves to the marketplace, you know, and protect, and also at the same time trying to protect yourself from being a modern day slavery to anything, right? Because end of the day, your knowledge is your best protection. And the better your knowledge is, the better you are being protected.
Okay, I think that gigs will continue to exist because, you know, of the way work is currently in the present system, or maybe in the next 10 years, because I personally feel that a lot of work is very oppressive. You know, work should be about fulfillment, should be about having a sense of like a responsibility, or you should feel happy, right? So I think gigs will continue to exist till the time work is less oppressive. I don't think it will be the end, but maybe automation will be the way forward. You know, probably the utopia that Marx dreamt of.
If you look at advanced countries like in Japan, they're already talking about society 5.0, right? How then you use technology to actually, you know, improve the societal conditions of their communities. So we're talking 4.0, but we really need to see that it is something that you cannot stop. Tell me, are you going to stop ordering stuff from your mobile phone? Never ever going to happen, right? Same thing in this situation. It's how do you then move and look at the sort of positive element of automation and use it for societal benefits. In the global sort of discussion now, they're talking about universal income, right? So when people don't have jobs and, you know, your robots take over, there is a basic universal income that you need to think about. Very controversial topic for sure, but these are the things and the trends that we all need to be aware of and think about how, in our context, we apply that and make it work for us as human beings. You can't turn back the clock.
We have time for one final question, one or two final questions. Anyone?
Hello. Hi, I'm Murali Prasad. For the longest time possible, I thought I was an engineer, and then I became an entrepreneur. But today I'm not sure whether I'm an entrepreneur or I'm a gig worker. Okay. So, so this question, when I graduated a few years back, maybe many years back, one of the best advice that I got from my professor, and I still remember that, is, Prasad, the first 10 years of your life, try to work for a few different people, and then the next 10 years, specialize in one area, and then the final 10 years, the next 10 years of your life, be your own boss. So that's something that I held on to, and I think it's still valid. But my question is this space and economy that you're talking about, is this safe for fresh graduates? Is this, perhaps this is the future, but is it safe for fresh graduates? I encourage entrepreneurship. I talk to a lot of people who build companies. But there's something that I learned over the years, is that you should not start certain things too young. There's a process, there's a discipline that you need to build before you go into being a good entrepreneur. So I don't encourage people to be an entrepreneur before they turn 30, because data shows a lot of failures, a lot of founders fail when they start too young at the age of 23. So my question is this safe? Is this right? Is the ecosystem and everything, are people ready? Are fresh graduates ready? Rather than to go and work for someone for a few years, or take gig ecosystem or economy as a mode of escapism, right? Rather than work for someone who could be harsh for you, you could just quit and work for someone else. And that just goes on and again and again. Thank you.
Oh, this is not an easy answer to have again, because there's no right formula to me personally, but I do think that the time has moved faster. Instead of 10, or it could be shorter these days, because the learning curve of companies or your client expect you to do things, they expect fast turnaround time. With the technology, they expect that to happen. If you look at what this gig economy is offering, actually is entrepreneurship from the beginning, actually, because you don't work for anyone. You're actually serving client. It's not like you do work for gig economy, you straight away get work or get client to work with. You have to, in certain platform, you have to bid for it, right? You have to put proposal. You have to market yourself. This is what I can do. This is my experience. This is what I have learned from for universities and things like that. So in a way, that is, if you look in the real life, in reality, it's just like you submit a proposal for a tender, right? That is a normal entrepreneur would do, right? But if you work on a gig platform, you also submit a maybe simpler proposal, try to sell what kind of services that you can offer to the client. So you start your entrepreneurship drive, your spirit, from the beginning, right? It doesn't matter what kind of competency, what kind of skill you're having, but I think coming back to universities, what kind of talent, entrepreneurship and creativity actually must be in whatever skill is very important. And the other thing is, this world is moving from industrialization to individualism. So we have now individual entrepreneurs, right? So what is individualism? What can sell now is a unique thing, right? Everyone is unique. Your talent is unique in certain ways, even though your competency, your skill are the same. So how do you produce unique things? Follow your passion. So this entrepreneurship, creativity, and follow your passion, I think the robots cannot replace you. The automation cannot replace you. Only human being would have that creative entrepreneurship spirit, and only human being can have that passion. And that passion normally produce great things and unique things which differentiate you from the rest. Otherwise, the robot will copycat and do it in a massive way.
Well, I just want to add a little bit about failure. If you're going out there, working for yourself, getting into entrepreneurship, then make failure your best friend, your best buddy, because it'll be around you always. You know? Get comfortable with it, learn from it. I learned a lot more from my failures than from my success. You know, that is a fact. So when you go out there and you make it a point not to fail, or you are scared too much about the failures, then you won't learn from it. Of course, there's a little bit of pain involved when it comes to failure. Don't tell me about it, because I know of it personally, you see. So, but the thing about failure is that it teaches you a lot, you know? And it's part of your growth momentum. So that's why I think if you're going into any kind of gig or entrepreneurship or working for your own self, right, you have to accept and embrace that failure. All right.
I think we will not take any more questions, but there's always opportunities to meet the panelists outside for further networking session. I learned a lot from this discussion, from this distinguished group of panelists and experts. Look, taking the last question, we can always turn it around. It's how we define entrepreneur. We can call them gigpreneurs. Yeah? If they make it big, then we won't call them entrepreneurs. We'll call them gigpreneurs. And there are success stories, yeah, of that. So at the end of the day, we have seen the interplay of technology and gig workers. And one of the final questions that I wanted to ask, which actually came up in the Q&A, was how do we expect gig work to develop in the future? And it's interesting to know that gig itself can be disrupted and displaced, especially when you define them as unskilled gig workers, yeah, as we have heard. So there's an interplay. You need technology. You need the apps to get into gig work and to develop gig work. At the same time, the technology can in itself disrupt. So it goes back to the definition. So I think these are very interesting issues that we were able to flesh out in our discussion. I learned a lot. I hope you learned a lot together with me. And with that, I would like to actually thank each of the 5 panelists for being here, for sharing your views. And I hope the audience can join hands with me to give them a big round of applause. I hand it over to Nasrul. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof. Evelyn. So I'll just like to invite Mr. Jojo to come up to the stage and present tokens of appreciation to our panelists. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. No, sebut nama. Mr. Shahrizan Abdul Latif. Yep. Okay. Mr. Daz. Miss Shireen Shariza. And Miss Pathma Subramaniam. Oh. Okay. And finally, Prof. Evelyn. Yes. Yeah. All right, can I now invite, yes, a quick photo session, okay? Can I invite Prof? Oh, this side, yeah. Yes, yeah. This side, yeah. Oh, sorry.